Happy holidays, everyone. The English Premier League back up and running after Christmas Day. The first game on Boxing Day, maybe a bit of a surprise. Or was it? Manchester City won, Everton won. Mark Donaldson alongside Janusz Michallik and Miguel Echegaray. Let's ask Janusz that question then. Is it a surprise now that City aren't winning games at home to Everton, giving their form, or is that still a big shock?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a big shock. I've seen it. It was zero energy on the pitch, not much more in the stands as well. I think we've been watching Manchester City or their, demise at the moment, at least for a little bit. So, I look at this match, and you compare that to Manchester City at their best. When they dominated the first 15 minutes, they get the go-ahead goal, they score 1-0. Normally, what do you think about that? Almost against any opponent, specifically against somebody like Everton, you think it's going to be 2-0, 3-0, maybe even 4-0 in no time. The game's done and dusted at home. Everybody goes home happy. But what happened after that, right? Almost immediately, Everton got more possession. Manchester City dropped off a little bit, which has been unusual. But we've seen it, so I don't know why that happened. Why they let him back in the game? I just think, boys, that this team, these players, if I had to get in their head and remember how it was, they just know they don't have that extra gear, and that extra gear is missing.
Why is it missing, LME?
Well, part of it is obviously the injuries, so it's asking a lot of the squad, but it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse. This isn't surprising anymore. Not at all. As you mentioned, one win in the last 13 matches. And by the way, Everton could have won this game. They were 4-2 at the end of that game, and they really should have done better with it. And this is a team, by the way, that's coming in very well defensively compact by Sean Dyche. But aside from the Wolves game, they haven't scored a single goal since November 4th. And they come in to the Etihad and they equalize, and it's no surprising. I think, honestly, to answer your question, this is one game now where I'm even going to be echoing this even more now. Now I'm putting more of the blame on Pep Guardiola, because now we're talking about the old saying, right? What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And every time Man City go forward, entering the final third, it's the same old tale. Erling Haaland is just wasting space. He just is. So I don't know if you have anybody else on the pitch that can maybe do something different. And I'm not blaming that on Haaland so much as opposed to Pep Guardiola, who needs to look at what's happening. They're taking shots, but only 5 on target. There's so much static presence. He missed a penalty in the 53rd minute, which talks about his confidence. But it's now about Pep Guardiola thinking to himself, why can't I just, maybe I'm going to change my philosophy just to stop the rut. And it's not happening. So it's not a shocking thing anymore. It's not a crisis. It's an endemic. 1 win in 13 matches. And things, once again, just like I said about United, I'm going to say it about City. They're going to get worse before they get better.
It's a difficult one, this, Janusz, to work out why a team that has been so dominant now ends up where they are. But are there clues, not just in football, but in sports? They talk about dynasties in the United States, and dynasties come to an end. Things change. Is this something that could have been foreseen by Pep Guardiola? He's not replaced to strengthen the squad, obviously with Rodri injured. We can't keep going back to that. He's brought back someone who left the club and is a couple of years older now, Ilkay Gundogan. He's brought someone in from La Liga and Girona, Savio, who has done some nice things, won the penalty today, but has that really strengthened the squad? There's ex-Man City players all over the place now, a couple of years older, 3-4 years older, flying high and winning games for their football club. LME spoke about Pep and him taking more of the blame here. Is it mainly on him and not recognizing that this is a dynasty that needed to be kind of evolved? Because right now, City are just playing this out to perhaps get top 4, because they ain't going to get any better than maybe 3rd or 4th the way they're playing.
Yeah, I mean, you can criticize Pep for not foreseeing this, I suppose, ahead of the season. I wouldn't criticize him, I guess, like me right now. So what are you going to do? I mean, look, these are the players that only know winning. They don't know any better, right? So when times like this comes in, think about it, right? I mean, the only goal these players have is to win the Premier League or win the big trophies. The moment that slips away, it's so hard because, you know, being second or third or fourth makes zero difference to these players. This is the top of the top. So they know that that is slipping away. You will see different Manchester City, I suspect, when it comes to the Champions League. I'm not saying they're going to win it, but that goal is going to become prominent. They're going to say, well, how do we save the season? We want that feeling that we had. So I think that's not so easy for Pep. I suppose you can talk about Pep rebuilding this because he wants to keep this legacy. Not so much his, but so Manchester City, it's not just a moment in time that, you know, for 7, 8, or 10 years, Manchester City were good, right? Because there's a real danger for Manchester City. Say Pep goes away and all of that goes away, right? I mean, would you be shocked to see Manchester City of all that, you know, half empty stadium and not results? I wouldn't be. So I think he wants to make sure that this winning culture stays there. But the reason I'm defending him a little bit is because, as Elemi said, I mean, those injuries, the goal slipping away because you've had to hit the wall. I mean, you can't do that forever. So I think it's that. But look at the injury. Look how many players he's lost. What about the players, you know, the staff? I mean, look at Arteta. Look at Maresca. They're not doing too bad, right? Look at even Borrello. He left for Austin FC here in the United States as well. He's been there for 10, 11 years. You know, I don't know the people around him right now, but those are big losses, especially in moments like these, right? People that you can bounce ideas off of. Maybe the players even enjoy that youthful energy of, you know, of Arteta. And, you know, this is a while now, but people like that would have helped around. So I don't know why we're going necessarily crazy. I get it because this is almighty Manchester City. We do that to Manchester United. Remember, not long ago, we did that to Liverpool, and they kind of, you know, they fell out of the top four and they switched it off. So it just, you know, I don't want to say it is what it is, but basically that is. I mean, what are you going to make out of it? You can't make these players run. I mean, Pep Guardiola is sending the right message, I'm sure.
So let's look back a little bit here, LME. They won 2-0 City at Chelsea in the opening day. And there's a reason I'm mentioning that. Okay, they kept a clean sheet that day. Since then, just 2 clean sheets, right? That is not good enough. The top teams either don't concede and know that 1 goal is enough, or if they do concede, know that they're going to score 2 and 3. And go back to what Janusz said right at the start, and I think it's a very salient point. City used to be swashbuckling. If they got a goal in the first 20 minutes, they usually got a goal straight afterwards. It was 2, it was 3, it was 4 at times, and the game was out of sight. The best teams also have a flat back 4 or a back 3 that is pretty much the same every time. Now, City have had injuries at the back. I get that. But he hasn't had, and today Ederson didn't play again, Ortega came in, who's a decent goalkeeper. He hasn't had that Arsenal invincible back line or that Liverpool line from the 80s. He didn't need that when he won some of his 4 in a row, but he could do with it now. So is it all on a kind of defense, knowing that the attackers are now going to have to score 2, 3, 4, which they're unable to do? Or is it because there isn't enough protection for a defense that allows its fullbacks to get forward to try and create?
Well, injuries are clearly an issue. Like you obviously, like we can't completely ignore that, right? And we have been saying it. Ruben Dias has been in and out. John Stones in and out. Rodri's absence, clearly, as we keep on going on about it, is massive. There's no doubt about it. Ederson not looking as good as it was before, injured as well. So you have to add context to that. But here's the difference in other seasons, especially when the rough got going, right? This season right now, since November, prior to this game, Man City have earned 4 points. Since November. That's the worst in the Premier League. And what used to happen previously was at least Pep Guardiola would look at his bench and be like, all right, do I have a few options here? And again, the broken record. He had Julian Alvarez who come in and do something. Maybe a younger version of Kevin De Bruyne with a healthier side. But again, it's not completely his fault. But my point is this. This season, this game in particular, I'm looking at their bench, right? I'm looking at their bench and they're all basically academy players. I understand the injuries. But he also, and also, I'm not just blaming Pep, the club itself did not do themselves any favors by not strengthening in the pre-summer in specific areas. Defensively, yes, it's a big, big problem. I'm not completely going to lay down the blame on Pep and everything because we've talked about the injuries, but there needed to be a transitional system. Right now, Manchester City are in a transitional stage. They're just not realizing it. Like, that's what's happening. This is not a scary team anymore. And you said it at the top. The title, forget about it. They're trying to like have a European spot at this point. And I know that January, the project and the plan for Manchester City has completely changed. They have to bring some people in because this cannot continue.
I'm deliberately not going chronologically through this game today because the bigger picture here is that a team that's won 4 consecutive titles is just a mess right now. They look like someone coming out of retirement playing another sport and then realizing they're nowhere near as good as they used to be. So it's to try and get to the bottom of why. And with Manchester City, Janusz, we've spoken a lot about Rodri. Now, here's something I don't think has been spoken much about. Given their lack of creativity right now, and the fact that the match directors of all the City games, when Kevin De Bruyne is on the bench, always get ISOs of Kevin De Bruyne, and it was 75 minutes today before he came on. Here's a question for you, maybe looking at it from somewhere a little bit different. How big a difference would Rodri have made if he had been available, if this team is not creating enough for Erling Haaland?
Yeah, I think he would have made a difference in those transitional moments, right? Some of the games lost because they push players forward, but I think going forward that's going to click. I mean, they're just too good. It's not. Maybe you can look at Pep like today, for example. You look at Doku and Silvinho. Why is he insisting on pushing them inside, right? I mean, stretch that team, deliver those crosses for Haaland. I mean, those 2 players can take players on, can deliver the balls. Instead, they're coming inside into all that traffic that you see that they couldn't break in the first place, even without those 2 wingers coming inside, because you think that Guardiola's going to and Rico Lewis is going to come in and beat players one-on-one and deliver the cross. Maybe Rico Lewis a little bit more, but Guardiola is not going to do it. I didn't get that creating of that. But guys, I mean, this is going to continue to happen. By the way, you're going to get a win somewhere in there. I'm going to say, oh, maybe they're back, and then you're going to lose. I think it's that creativity in the front, because if they control the game in the front, then you know what? Then those transitional moments are not going to exist as often as they do. So, of course, Rodri is missed. I think not just for his playing, but for his character, right? For his leadership. That's massive, because the type of players, the type of player and person he is. But that's going to change. I think Manchester City, you're looking at a team that, and LME, because that changing of philosophy, I don't know if I buy into it. I'm not sure if I read you incorrectly, so it's not a criticism in any way. But I would actually, I mean, if Pep Guardiola became more pragmatic, I think I would criticize him tenfold. This is not the type of manager. This is not the type of team that all of a sudden you want them to say, you know what, we're going to do this differently in the middle of the season. That's not what's gotten them there. I don't think we as neutrals want to see that, right? I mean, for the result's sake, and maybe if you're a diehard fan, there's probably games that I get what you're saying, that, hey, you had the lead 1-0, maybe sit back. But they sort of did that. I don't know if it was intentional. Certainly, I don't think Everton did that to him. And in the end, they dropped points. I think this is the team that's got to pile on, as we were saying, and just go after teams like they've done in the past. And I don't believe he's going to change that, and I don't think he should.
I wasn't talking about.
That's the other thing.
I wasn't talking about him needing to change completely and sit back. I'm talking about the fact that he leaves Erling Haaland for the entire game when he wasn't good, and he takes off Jeremy Doku as opposed to when Kevin De Bruyne comes in. I'm just saying that he sometimes has to look at this plan and think maybe there's a plan B here. Because when my bigger focus, honestly, is on Erling Haaland. When you have somebody like that there and it's not helping the cause, you have to do something different. And yeah, okay, fair enough. Pep Guardiola's an auteur. And come on, I'm the one that says that when he retires, he's going to be the greatest manager the game has ever seen. I'm just saying that right now, the proof is in the pudding. 1 win in the last 13 matches. Injuries all over the place. You have to do something different. Why don't you take off Erling Haaland and perhaps be a bit more mobile up top so Everton get a little bit more disconcerted when they're going forward? Kind of like what Liverpool did when they put Luis Diaz up front against Tottenham. Like, I'm just saying that I'm not saying he has to completely change his philosophy. I just think that sometimes he has to look at what he has on the pitch and say, okay, what do I always pick and it's actually not working continuously? And in this situation, for me, it's Erling Haaland. So he has to change something. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, guys. 1 win in 13 matches. This is no longer a crisis. It's an endemic. It has to be fixed.
Yeah, it's just when we talk about, oh, well, it's Haaland. It's a name brand, okay? Erling Haaland leading the lines. He'll get goals. Well, he won't if he's not more involved. He won't if there's no creativity. Janusz, we've seen it in many sports, right? We saw it in golf. That was the main one with Tiger Woods. Okay, the name is there, but has Manchester City lost its luster? Have they not got that fear factor for opposition teams? Because I know we've just spoken a lot about Manchester City. Everton deserve a lot of credit today for what they did. And Janusz, is that because Manchester City this season doesn't have the fear factor that they have had in previous years?
They don't have it at the moment, but see, for them, they have the ability to change that within a game or two or three. That's the beauty of it. Not many teams.
Going to start.
Well,
at this point, you need to wait for 13.
Well, because it's not about the ability of the individual players. They've proven it. Lost shown it that they have it. They haven't lost it, right? I mean, even if you think that they lost a step, but what does that mean? There's still enough players that can do it, right? They just lost that little bit of a hunger and if you want to call it motivation, but you can change that, right? I mean, there's going to be a point you watch, and that's a job of Pep Guardiola, obviously, but I think it's in the messaging more than it is in the quality and ability of these players. And I think, as I've said before about Erling Haaland, we always knew he's one-dimensional. That's never going to change. It was no different when he was at Dortmund. It's, but if he gets the service, he's deadly. That's obvious. So you can change that. And I mentioned what's happening in the wide areas. That part, I don't understand why he continuously pushes those players inside. I'm not saying that if they stay wide, the whole game would have changed, but I would have liked that, because you're playing in the hands of Sean Dyche, right? The more people in front of the goal, the more difficult it's going to be for Manchester City to get through, even though they did. That goal was kind of what Manchester City needs more of, right? Well, we remember that through ball when Bernardo Silva gets there. So I think usually when you have a situation like that with big clubs, you're talking about a massive rebuild. I don't believe that that's needed here. It's just that extra energy, that remotivation. It's sort of a heart to heart when you say, okay, boys, I'm not going to lie to you. We all know you're not stupid. We all know that the title is gone. But there are other goals because you have that goal again. Imagine before the season, if you made the right moves or not. You won 4 straight. What is that? They only think of one thing, of winning that title. Nothing else matters. They're not going to be satisfied with anything else. That or maybe Champions League or, a domestic cup. I doubt it. If it's there to be taken, they'll take it, I suppose. So I do believe that Manchester City, Mark, can change that within a game or two to get back that mentality.
And that's the problem. It might be too late. And it might be, as was reported in some of the papers this morning, Pep Guardiola taking the 2 years that he seems to have left at Manchester City with a contract extension to put in place something that's ready to go as a brand new kind of Manchester City in a couple of years' time. We saw it today. There were a few players left out through injury and various other things. But right now, it just seems to be for Manchester City, next up, Leicester, then West Ham, and see if they can find a way to get 3 points, which is very different. I want to end deservedly so on Everton, LME, and I want to take you back to August. They went to Spurs, right? They were absolutely grim. They lost 4-0 on the back of a 3-0 thumping at home to Brighton. They then played Bournemouth at home and they lost by 3-2. So we've got a 3-goal conceded, a 4-goal conceded, a 3-goal conceded. Now, they hardly look like they're conceding too many chances at all. They don't concede many goals. They've got a brilliant concession rate compared with the rest of the teams in the league. So what's changed for Everton, and defensively especially?
I think they're more focused at the back. I think at the very beginning of the season, they were a little bit inconsistent in terms of their decision making. But I think what Sean Dyche has done, especially as the team has understood each other better after the preseason, they have now become a little bit more compact. And I think they have a blueprint on how to play, relying a lot on the counter, but also at the same time, there's talent there. Tarkowski, I think is we've always known how much of a leader he is. He can sometimes be a little bit lackadaisical in his tackling, but he's very strong and he's a good leader at the back. We know that Branthwaite's a great talent, and Jordan Pickford, to be honest with you, this is why he's England's number one. Like there's moments when he's really needed, both as a goalkeeper and both as a voice. And then when you have counter-attacking prowess, it can work, and it worked today. And to your point, they are very strong defensively. They just don't score enough goals. So they just have to try and do that in order to avoid relegation and hopefully push up. But, draws against Arsenal, draws against Chelsea, a draw against Man City is nothing to laugh about. It deserves a lot of respect.
And Dye scored a really good goal for Everton, Janusz. But do they need to sign a striker in the January transfer window? Because love him to bits, Dominic Calvert-Lewin leaves everything out there, but he's not the answer right now.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, new ownership group, right? I mean, there's a big question about, what directions they want to take. Is it with Sean Dyche? Is it, without? Look, I mean, we're talking about two teams here. What's different, you've asked, with Everton? Well, they rediscovered their identity, which is Sean Dyche's identity, not Everton's necessarily, right? I mean, just like Pep is looking to rediscover his identity, which is the attacking one. I mean, defensive one is important. We know that at times they were the best in the league when they got Ruben Dias because they were leaking goals. So that's the difference here. And it's okay for Everton to play that way, because what happened in the last 3 or 4 years, right? Constantly fighting relegation, this massive club who's moving into this beautiful, beautiful stadium. And that stadium alone probably is going to put on pressure on Sean Dyche, Everton, or whoever else is going to be in charge, right? Because you want to make sure that you're fighting for, the top 5, 6 and not trying to or not being relegated. So that's what Sean Dyche does. We all knew it. We were all surprised in the beginning of the season, because we still go back and think of Sean Dyche at Burnley and what he can do. So no surprises here, and LME rightfully so. Tons of credit, because you look at the last 3 games, top opposition, 2 clean sheet in that, and just 1 conceded here. And as you said, I mean, a better team would have won here. A better team than Everton would have gotten all 3 points. And you've pointed out that Everton perhaps should have done it themselves.
A super point for Everton, and congratulations to them. It might have been more, but they would have taken that before the game. For Manchester City, 10 points behind Liverpool, having played 2 games more. And how to sum up their season so far? How about this? They're behind Bournemouth on goal difference, and they've played a game more. Bye for now.